Don't worry, be happy t-shirt. Welcome, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, Jai Baba, Jai
Yeah,
Baba.
Baba.
So,
Karthik,
Mama, you want to read or you're ready, Ashok?
I'm ready. I am ready. If you want.
Okay, go ahead. Seven realities. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. The seven realities: existence, love, sacrifice, renunciation, knowledge, control, and surrender. I give no importance to creed, dogma, caste, or the performance of religious ceremonies and rites, but to the understanding of the following. 1. The only real existence is that of the one and only God, who is the self in every finite self. The only real love is the love for this infinity God, which arouses an intense longing to see, know, and become one with its truth, God. The only real sacrifice is that in which, in pursuance of this love, all things, body, mind, position, welfare, and even life itself are sacrificed. 4. The only real renunciation is that which abandons, even in the midst of worldly duties, all selfish thoughts and desires. 5. The only real knowledge is the knowledge that God is the inner dweller in good people and in so called bad, in saint and in so called sinner. This knowledge requires you to help all equally as circumstances demand without expectation of reward. When compelled to take part in a dispute, to act without the slightest trace of enmity or hatred, to try to make others happy with brotherly or sisterly feeling for each one, and to harm no one in thought, word, or deed, not even those who harm you. The only real control is the discipline of senses to abstain from indulgence in low desires, which alone ensures absolute purity of the character. The only real surrender is that in which poise is undisturbed by any adverse circumstance, and the individual, amidst every kind of hardship, is resigned with perfect calm to the will of God. Avatar Meher Baba Jai.
Thank you. So, um, we finished the avatar in the last session. Any questions, any discussions on that? Anybody did any more research? We can talk about it. Else, we can continue with the next chapter, which is the man god.
Uh, do we have any literature which we can read regarding say descent of an avatar? So how actually the descent happens, and when we say the five perfect masters bring down the avatar to this play of duality, what do we mean by that, and what are the mechanisms involved? If there is any literature on that, I would like to know. Because the avatar comes as a normal human being till some stage. So, what is the sanskaras that they carry at that point of time? And the five perfect masters, one of them will turn the avatar into, say, God realization, and then another or a few more join together to bring him into consciousness of the creation with the God realization together. And then he becomes almost a perfect master. And what are the uh, say characteristics of an avatar which are different from Sadguru or a perfect master? And all these aspects, where can we get literature to read and understand better? Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. So I think that's a interesting question. I'm not aware of too many references other than, of course, beams. And I believe Lord Meher has it in greater detail. But from an Lord Meher more in a anecdotal and biographical sequence, whereas I think what you're looking for is more academic and uh, conceptual,
Yes.
which I really don't know which is the definitive source. Karma.
Yeah, Jai Baba, if I understood the question, let me try to repeat that. One is the question was about the descent of the avatar, which is basically using the five perfect masters of that particular age or cycle, we should call it, because it's every 400, 700 to 1400 years. It happens once. Age is 65 to 125 years, and cycle is 700 to 1400 years, as per the definition in God Speaks supplement. So that is one question. The second question is the comparison between perfect masters and avatar, the attributes. Third, I think he was talking about sanskaras, how does that work? Fourth is which particular perfect masters of the five becomes the actual teacher or guru. And I guess these were the four main things that I I believe that Dr. Mama wanted to, ask here. So I think that one way, if you really want to understand this process, like I said, you have to collate all this information from different sources. I think the three main sources are discourses, then God speaks, then beams. And then the secondary sources will be Lord Meher Online and many other, books that are available online in the trust website, because people who have written, like I'm reading currently Kitty Davis book, Only Love Prevails. She was there with Baba for 60 years from 1931 onwards. And of course, there are the Meher Baba journals and many other resources where you might hear about different aspects about the avatar and perfect masters. But I can quickly tell you my own understanding. One is, of course, you use the Control F and put avatars and perfect masters. You'll get a lot of literature on that. One is very clear. I think the supplement in God Speaks was a little bit unclear on the avatar and the descent, because it not contradicts, it's confusion how to interpret the statement. So beam, we ourselves struggle with it. But one thing I noticed, that Baba really makes it, he wants to make it like a treasure hunt, like a puzzle. He doesn't say things directly or in some of the descriptions and what we read in discourses and God speaks and beams. So I think beams, being appendage of God speaks, clearly gives you a direct answer to the question. um, First of all, the state 2b, eternal avataric infinite consciousness, state 2b, which happens immediately after the whim, where God realizes himself, right? Infinite consciousness is God realizes himself. Infinite unconsciousness is what is we are, the drop souls that are going through the process. Now, imagine for 13.8 billion years that eternal avataric infinite consciousness was waiting, and then these drop souls through state A, substate 2A, went through evolution, reincarnation, involution. And we know from the definition of the avatar, avatar is the first drop soul who became God realized. Now, who was his master? The master was the eternal avataric infinite consciousness, substate 2B. He is the only formless master, you know, and uh, and that was the master for the first avatar. Okay, because the first avatar is the first drop soul who became God realized. Then what happens? The subsequent souls which became God realized, who became perfect masters, and so on. Then the second avatar manifested, where the perfect masters of that particular time, just like we had the five perfect masters during Baba, Meher Baba, they brought down the avatar. Meher Baba now is in the Vijnani, Vijnan Bhumika, like, in the formless aspect. All the perfect masters, self-realized beings, are actually in state 2B form, in the formless aspect. And so what happens, the perfect masters in each cycle, during the avataric cycle, they bring down the avatar from its formless aspect. Now, who will be the avatar? It can be only the first drop soul, not the eternal avataric infinite consciousness. So the first drop soul keeps recycling himself, to be the avatar again and again. So that is how the avatar is coming down. Now, how does he come? Because the divine, see, this is very interesting because it is almost like a divine game. There is a certain periodicity that we see, 700 to 1400 years, where it's almost like spiritual entropy happens, where the world is going through so much chaos that it's time for the perfect masters between 700 to 1400 years to bring down the avatar. Okay. Now, what does it mean to bring down the avatar? Because that is also pre-scripted, I think, by God, which we know has 7 different aspects like existence, love, truth, infinity, self, and so on. So that we read, I think, probably in another discourse, that this is all mapped out even before the avatar is brought down. So the perfect masters are basically, you can call it as a medium, who are bringing down the avatar, who is, there is already a pre-mapped aspect what this particular avatar is going to do in this particular avataric cycle. Now, when that avatar, the first drop soul who became God realized, comes down, he comes with Vijnani Sanskaras and he comes with the 10 circles. Okay. Now, the Vijnani Sanskaras means that he is not aware of himself. So he comes like an ordinary human being and is veiled. And then, like what happened to Meher Baba, from 1913, he first met Hasrat Baba Jan, who gave him God realization. He went right up to the Satchitananda state and stayed there like a zombie, And then he had to meet the other perfect masters who had to bring him down. And each one was instrumental in giving him the infinite power, infinite knowledge, infinite bliss, whatever you may call it. And then he had to spend 7 years with Upasani Maharaj, who had to work on the avatar. It's almost going back to school, And but the difference between the avatar and perfect masters and ordinary souls is the perfect avatar doesn't have to go through the evolution, reincarnation, involution process. He just needs to be unveiled. So what happens when he's ready? We saw that Upasani Maharaj then told Meher Baba, now my job is done, and he basically, I think, gave him the power, So basically, when the avatar is born, he becomes the head and he takes charge of the universe as such. So that is one aspect. Now he will operate on Yoga Sanskaras. What is Yoga Sanskaras? This is sanskaras which basically does not create new sanskaras like the way we do, spending sanskaras, because it is Yoga Sanskaras is only done by self-realized beings, because they are also working on planet Earth. They are working as normal people, but whatever action they do does not create any kind of prarabdha sanskaras, So Vijnani sanskaras is before the avatarhood is veiled consciously, and Yoga Sanskaras is the sanskaras with which the self-realized beings, including perfect masters and avatars, operate in the normal day-to-day world. So there is one aspect. And what is the difference between perfect master and avatar? One is becoming a human being. That is, the avatar becomes everything in the universe. He becomes a rock. He becomes a bird. He's into everything. Whereas a perfect master or self-realized beings, after they self-realize are in embodied form as the 56 God realized souls, they operate on Yoga Sanskaras, but they only act as one. Acting meaning that if they get any kind of ailment, it is not the way Baba suffers, because the avatar suffers just like an ordinary human being, Whereas the perfect masters, if they are going through any kind of physical suffering, they are actually detached, but it seems like they are going through the suffering actually. This is the difference between perfect masters and avatars. Avatars is a becoming one, whereas perfect masters, they only act. Okay. Then what else? Is there anything else that I've not covered? Yeah, Baba.
Can you explain Vijnani versus Yoga Yoga again? So Yoga Yoga, I get there's no prarabdha or any winding up or creating new samskaras. But what is Vijnani samskaras? The one that the avatar comes with.
See, the funny thing is this Vijnani Sanskaras is only mentioned. See, Baba does not mention Yoga Yoga Sanskaras and Vijnani Sanskaras in beams or in God
God
Speaks.
speaks. Yeah.
It is
Only
only
in
in the
discourses.
discourses. Probably he didn't want to confuse us with too many terminologies, you know. So according to the discourses chapters in on Vijnan, when he put the control of Vijnani Sanskaras, you won't see much. What I have gathered is basically the avatar descends with this inner circle, with a circle of 122 with Vijnani Sanskaras. Vijnani Sanskaras basically, see, everybody is operating based on our sanskaras. One is ordinary human beings like us are operating through prarabdha sanskaras. Self-realized beings, because they have no prarabdha sanskaras, because technical thing is manonash, right? Equal to sanskaras become zero. But because they are operating in a physical form on planet Earth, you need to have sanskaras to operate. But their sanskaras are called Yoga Yoga sanskaras because it does not create any new impressions or imprints. They are not unwinding sanskaras nor spending sanskaras. They are just doing things mapped out. Vijnani sanskaras is similar, where it does not, especially for the avatar, you can say that it is just like Yoga Yoga sanskaras, right? But he is not conscious of his divinity. See, avatar is already, self-realized being, correct? And he keeps coming again and again. The only difference between yoga sanskaras and Vijnani sanskaras is Vijnani sanskaras is before avatarhood is established consciously, whereas yoga sanskaras is the conscious aspect after self-realization, after the avatar himself realizes who is he, or through the perfect master. And it also relates to all the God realized beings, the 56 God realized souls who are in embodied form and working on planet Earth. That's how it is. Jai Baba.
Yeah, so it's going to come up, the Vijnani Sanskaras and Yoga Yoga. So let's read it in the circle chapter. So, is that helpful? Mama, anything more? No. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Sorry. So when we,
Okay.
that was quite helpful in understanding a lot of things. But the basic question still remains for me. When we say the 5 perfect masters bring down the avatar, so what is actually that they do to bring him down? So that is not explained anywhere. What do you actually mean by bringing an avatar down to the earth to play his whatever game he wants to play here? So like that, there are a few questions.
I think the answer would lie in what Kama already said, which is the timing is already predetermined. So in a sense, they're just expecting the arrival, uh, the uh, the perfect masters of the time, and then they prepare the ground, and then they start working on him, and then hand over and make him Kutube Shad. But I think I mean that's all I have understood. Anything more, Kama? Or you were saying something?
If we look at Jesus Christ and remember the 3 wise men or something, I don't know the story, but it's like an analogy about, as you rightly said, the perfect masters are not doing anything as such. When you call the descent of the avatar, I mean, they are just waiting for that avatar to come down because he's in the formless aspect. Substate 2b, Nirguna Nirakar, eternal avataric infinite consciousness. So that particular drop soul avatar is brought down in embodied form. This is already predetermined. You can say they are like the perfect masters are like, when the baby is born, what do you call? You have that lady. What is the terminology for somebody who's helping during the birth of a
First
baby?
wife. Whatever.
Yes, exactly.
Not first wife.
Oh, not
Midwife.
what is that?
Midwife.
Midwife. Yeah. Thank you,
Right.
Soma.
So, sorry, I had to find an analogy. Okay, I mean they're not waiting there in the hospital as you see, but they are waiting. They know he's coming. They are,
Yeah, that's a good
Babajan was waiting.
point.
Babajan was waiting under the tree, man. Like, okay, Narayan Maharaj was sitting there in Narayan Gaon, right? And all of them were just waiting. Baba had to go to them. Okay. So this is what we know from the current avataric period, because we don't know about what happened to Muhammad and Buddha and all that, because that's all like so many years ago. But we saw, if we can take the story of Meher Baba and understand how we can interpret all these aspects of descent. See, if it is already mapped out, you can't do anything. And anyway, it's a big divine dream, right? It's a new computer game that is going on, a different version of self-realization process for the 21st century. So Baba is just coming down because it's already mapped out. It's time for humanity to change how you play the game. No more rituals, no more chanting. Just get on with it, Hey, Baba.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So with that, we can start reading if others are okay, unless there's more discussion items or questions. No? Okay. So we start with the man god. Physical page number is 271. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. This is in two parts, I think. Man God, part one, aspirants and God realized beings. There's a footnote to start things. The man God is also called perfect master, Sadguru, Kutub, or Salik-e-Mukamil, and is most frequently referred to throughout the discourses simply as master. Master, and I think subsequently it's more perfect master. Yeah, but many of the illustrations and stories that we saw before, we just saw the word master. That also has to be taken as perfect master. Continue. Even the subtitle is Joy of God Intoxication. Even before God realization, advanced aspirants pass through states of consciousness that in some ways are akin to the state of God realization. For example, the musts and advanced souls of the higher planes become desireless and immersed in the joy of God intoxication. Since their only concern is God, they become the recipients of the unique happiness characteristic of the God state. They have no beloved except God, and they have no longing except for God. For them, God is not only the only beloved, but also the only reality that counts. They are unattached to everything except God and remain unaffected by the pleasures and the pains to which worldly persons are subject. They are happy because they are always face to face with the divine beloved, who is the very ocean of happiness. Powers of advanced aspirants. Advanced aspirants not only participate in some of the privileges of the divine state, but also wield great occult and mystic powers, siddhis. Depending upon the powers they wield, the aspirants belong to different types. For example, even on the first plane, the aspirant begins to see lights and colors, smell perfumes, and hear the music of the subtle world. Those who advance further can see and hear things at any distance. Some aspirants see the whole gross world as a mirage. Other advanced aspirants can take a new body immediately after their death. Some agents of perfect masters have such control over the gross world that they can change their bodies at will. In Sufi tradition, they are called Abdal. All these achievements of advanced aspirants pertain to the phenomenal world. The field of their powers is itself a domain of illusion, and the miracles they perform do not necessarily mean that they are in any way nearer to the God state. Different states of aspirants. From the standpoint of consciousness also, aspirants belong to various types according to the line in which they have advanced and according to their nearness to the God state. Some get intoxicated with the extraordinary powers and, tempted to use them, have a long pause in their Godward march. They get stuck in the consciousness of the intermediate planes. Some become dazed, confused, and even self-deluded. Others are caught in a coma. There are some who, with difficulty, try to come down to gross consciousness by repeating a physical action or by repeating some utterance many times. There are those who, in their God intoxication, are so indifferent to the life of the gross world that to all appearances their external behavior is like that of mad persons. And there are some who tread the spiritual path while performing their worldly duties. State of the Unmatta. Owing to their exalted states of consciousness, some advanced aspirants are worthy of adoration, but they are in no way comparable to God-realized beings, either in spiritual beauty and perfection of the inward state of consciousness or in their powers. All aspirants, right up to the sixth plane, are limited by finite consciousness, and they are all in the domain of duality and illusion. Aspirants are mostly happy. This is due to their contact and communion with God. For some, the joy of inward companionship with the divine beloved is so great that they become unbalanced in their behavior. As a result, in their unsubdued state of God intoxication, they may abuse people, throw stones at them, and behave as though possessed. Their state is often described as that of the Unmatta. Owing to the exuberance of uncontrolled joy in their inward contact with the divine beloved, they are utterly heedless of worldly standards or values. Because of the fearlessness that comes to them through complete detachment, they often manifest a self-expression that can easily be mistaken for idiosyncrasy and unruliness. Poise and happiness of God realized. Only when it attains God realization on the seventh plane can the soul fully control its joy. The unlimited happiness that is eternally his does not in any way unbalance the person because he is now permanently established in the poise of non-duality. The extravagance of newly found love and joy is no longer for him. Occasional unsettlement due to increasing joy at the closer proximity of God is also finished because he is now inseparably united with him. He is lost in the divine beloved and merged in him, who is the infinite ocean of unbounded happiness. The happiness of the God-realized person is unconditional and self-sustained. It is therefore eternally the same, without ebb and flow. He has arrived at the unqualified finality and unassailable equanimity. The happiness of the aspirants is born of their increasing proximity and closer intimacy with the divine beloved, who, however, remains externalized as the other. Whereas the happiness of the God realized is an unalienable aspect of the God state, in which there is no duality, the happiness of the aspirants is derivative, but the happiness of the God realized is self grounded. The happiness of the aspirants comes from increasing bounty of divine grace, but the happiness of the God realized merely is. Please stop me if anybody wants to discuss or ask a question. Differences in relation to universe.
Karthik, the previous paragraph can be repeated. There are three aspects which are very clearly stressed regarding the happiness and the other aspects of the aspirant and the God realized.
Divine beloved. Yeah, sure. The happiness of the aspirants is born of their increasing proximity and closer intimacy with the divine beloved, who, however, remains externalized as the other.
They are seeing God.
Yeah.
They are seeing God. They are still not totally merged. So that is the.
Correct.
They are still
God as separate. God as separate.
Yes.
Yeah. They are still seeing God as separate from themselves.
That is
and that's the status of the aspirant. Whereas the happiness of the God realized is an inalienable aspect of the God state in which there is no duality. Whereas on the other hand, the God realized is completely in union. The happiness of the aspirants is derivative, but the happiness of the God realized is self-grounded. So one is dependent, one is freestanding or independent. The happiness, I mean. The happiness of the aspirants comes from increasing bounty of divine grace, but the happiness of the God realized merely is.
Existence is.
Is, yes. IS capital. Okay. I'll continue. Differences in relation to universe. When a person attains God realization, he has infinite power, knowledge, and bliss. These intrinsic characteristics of inner realization are always the same despite minor differences, which give rise to certain indistinguishable types of God realized beings. These differences between the God realized are purely extrinsic and pertain only to their relation with the universe. They do not create any degrees of spiritual status between the God realized, who are all perfect, and with all life and existence. From the point of view of the creation, however, these differences between the God realized are not only definite, but worth noting. After God realizations, most souls drop all their bodies and remain eternally immersed in God consciousness. For them, God is the only reality and the entire universe is a zero. They are so completely identified with the impersonal aspect of the truth that they have no direct link with the world of forms. I'll pause here and I'll I'll make an observation. I think this is the key element that needed to precede what we discussed on Saturday last week, which is Ravi's discussion. So the first overarching message that Baba is giving here is there's no difference between the God realized beings, though there might be differences in the way they relate with creation. If you see that in the context of all the of the presentation on Saturday, it makes absolute sense. So the only difference is how they are dealing with creation and the phenomenal world after getting God realization. Otherwise, it's all the same. So that's, I think, the first slide there should talk about this in that presentation as a feedback.
Jay Baba, what I would like to add, what you just said is correct. There are only two aspects. One is nirvana, first stage of final fana or real fana, which means every drop soul, that is the goal, nirvana. And this is before death, of course. We are not talking about moksha, ordinary mukti after death. We are talking about the process of God realization. Then the second stage, which is called the second stage of fana phila, is God realization or self-realization. This is called the God state. So all souls will get nirvana or moksha, but all souls are not going to become God realized or self-realized. Now, this we don't know because this is how the plan is. Similarly, all the souls that become God realized or self realized, most of them will drop their embodied. So, most of them will drop their embodied form and go off into the formless. A few will remain in embodied form, which is part of the 56 God realized souls, which is in page number 278. And out of the 56, we know 5 are perfect masters who are in Sahaja Samadhi, divinity in action. Jivan Muktas, also Sahaja Samadhi, but no direct active participation in public affairs. Then you have the Paramahamsas and Madzubs in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So, as you rightly said, once you have achieved self-realization, God realization, there is no difference between the avatar perfect masters, the 56 God realized souls, and the self-realized drop souls who have dropped their bodies and gone off into the formless. All of them are experiencing the same God state. The difference comes later when some are creation consciousness, like the Paramahamsa and the Jivan Mukta and the perfect masters who have body consciousness, because the Madzub doesn't have body consciousness. But Madzub is also having the same state of God consciousness like all of them. The functions change, correct? It is only the functions that change with the remaining 56 God realized souls. So you're right. So the self-realization, God realization state is the same whether you are a perfect master or any of the 56 God realized beings. Jai Baba.
Super.
Jay Baba, can I ask a doubt?
Sure.
As Kama said that at any point of time in the table, it says that there are 56 God realized souls who retain their body. So which means there are many more God realized souls, but they don't retain their body. Is that right?
It means that once you become God realized, there are two choices. One is you immediately drop your body within 2 or 3 days and go off into the formless because there is no function for you to be in the embodied form. See, the reason we have the body, the gross body, subtle body, mental body, is to attain God realization. Once that job is over, you can go straight into the formless or you remain in embodied form This is also determined by a divine plan. In fact, it says it's determined right from the whim, actually, what each drop soul is going to become, in a way.
Okay, okay. So there are 56 who will still be in the embodied form and continue to do their duties, whereas the others will just drop their body and go into the disembodied
Formless.
form. Formless.
Yes. Correct,
Okay.
correct. The 56 is also predetermined. Who will be part of that 56? And out of the 56, who will be the 5 perfect masters, and so on and so forth.
The table also interestingly talks about the 11 ages where there are 5 perfect masters, and I think 1, 3, 5, 7, whatever. There are about 7 madzubs, out of which only 3 retain their body. The other 4 drop their body. So madzubs are fixed in number. It's always that specific number where only 3 retain the body. The other 4 drop their body.
Yes, that is, I think that's a good point. You know, from reading that, I kind of realized there are only 3 or 7 madzubs in each age somehow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, but God realized souls are more. Okay, thank you.
One point here, I had put 2 sentences in the telegram last few days back. So in this connection, what is my understanding? I want to make it very clear so that any misconception can be corrected by others. These individualized souls, which go through the process of evolution, involution, and God realization, after God realization, still remain as individualized souls. So in the state 2B, if I am correct, they are still there. That means if you take the ocean, there are so many drops which are already God realized, which are still there merged in the ocean, but still can have their own identity. It looks like that. And this point I would like somebody to clarify. And this ocean, over the eons of the period of evolution, so after the onset of human birth on the say earth, so many have got realized, and they are in that state to be, and only a few are available at each cycle to do their duties, as the uh, numbers pointed out, like 7,000 the cycle members coming to some thousand odd, and then the 56 God realized souls always present in each phase of life in this duality. But once they are God realized, they are after they drop their body, they are in the state to be stage. So the earlier my idea was that we say merge with God state, or we are totally say abolished. But these statements here, and whatever statements I had put up and wherever I have read, they seem to remain as individualized, God realized souls in the non-embodied state, in state to be. This is my understanding. I want some clarity on this, and any misconceptions may kindly be say explained so that I can revise my ideas. Jai Baba.
Yeah, Baba. I think Doc Mama is correct. You have explained it well. You are on the right track. You are correct. And once the drop soul becomes God realized or self realized, the individualized, see, the infinite individuality is maintained. That is the difference. There is a limited individuality for ordinary souls, whereas you have unlimited individuality for self-realized drop souls, who you rightly said are merged in the ocean even though they are merged in the ocean, they are conscious of their divinity. Whereas the other drop souls who are also merged in the ocean, they are not conscious of their divinity. That is this whole game, this divine game, God, game of duality to get over duality, is from unconscious divinity to conscious divinity. I think this you will read probably in one of the Man God chapters or somewhere else, that this whole process is going from unconscious divinity to conscious divinity. See, the whole spiritual game, there are a lot of paradoxes which the limited mind can't understand. Just like in the material world, when you look at quantum physics, the duality of the wave particle duality of light is also very tough. Richard Feynman, one of the great, physicists, he said anybody who says I understood quantum mechanics has not understood quantum mechanics, because even they struggle with it because they have to just go through by observations. Similarly, Baba has said in God Speaks, we can't, even the perfect masters and avatars can't describe the state of Paratpar Parabrahma state. The consciousness is, right? The state one. Whereas in the state two Paramatma, then they talk about existence, God, because beyond God's state is indescribable. Beyond God's state is describable in a very approximate manner, like Paramatma, Allah, God the Father, and we know the seven realities: truth, self, infinity, existence, and so on, different aspects of God. So, yes, to answer your question, you're correct. The individuality is maintained after they drop their body and they are in the formless state in state 2B. Jai Baba.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other view from others or any contributory factors? Because this is a very, say, point of clarity comes only when we understand this process. That's why we need to struggle at this point to make ourselves clear about it. And this point, when we take that they remain as individualized souls in the infinite ocean, um, all three aspects of Hinduism can be explained there. That is how I look at it. So that is a real revelation. So that's why I wanted clarity on this. Thank you.
Yeah,
Just
Baba,
as
this is exact.
sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so just I'll go ahead with the questions. We can answer it together. As Mamaji said, that's how we can explain the Hinduism. So I wanted to ask that we have thousands of gods and demigods in Hinduism. So are they all belonging to the substate 2B?
Not to be, I think. They are in the, I think, as what Kama already told now, Paratpara Brahma is unexplainable. And say Paramatma state, all these play of all the gods start and goes down till say to the say creator, sustainer, destroyer. So all this area comes only on that. All our gods are demigods. All that is in that sphere, I feel.
Okay, creator, sustainer, and destroyer. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Kama, please go ahead.
No, that was a good question. One way of looking at all the different crores of gods that we have in Hindu mythology is basically symbolic aspects or different attributes of God.
Yes.
Like, creator, preserver, dissolver, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva is basically the law of nature. Stars are born, they live and they die. Human beings are born, they live and they die. So these were symbolic, definitions to explain nature in an easy to understand manner. And especially when you're going through karma kanda, when you're doing rituals and stuff like that, it's like in kindergarten, A for apple, you got to show the kid, apple, and B for ball. So I think that all these Hindu gods are definitely analogical representation of the formless aspect in form, because God in human form has so many different attributes and aspects, but the formless is nothing. So that is one part. So I was just going to say on a humorous note that Doc Mama, being a medically trained doctor, has done a very good spiritual surgery on this whole process now. So I have to thank him. Jai Baba.
Anyway, I agree more with Kama's viewpoint than Soma's and Mama's. Wow, Kama, Soma, Mama. That's interesting. Anyway, so I think it's more symbolic, like Kama said, and again, that's my my point of view more than anything. I don't have a Baba reference to support that. So Hinduism has all these aspects, like Kama said, the qualities, the aspects of God represented by symbols to make it easier for relation or easier to relate to for early aspirants or new aspirants, right? And even non-aspirants, because even the non-aspirants identify with the right thing or the right concepts with that symbolism. So they are not spiritually seeing it, but they're still relating to the right things, right? So I think it is only symbolic, and yeah, that's my personal opinion. Second point I wanted to make is those of you that were on the God Speaks Watt Parks call a few weeks back, Ram Nori brought up a point of henotheism. I don't know how many of you picked it up. There was something that he talked about henotheism. So he was pointing out that Hinduism is not henotheistic, where there is only one God. I was very intrigued by that, and I was thinking a lot more. And then I'll connect back to this concept that we just discussed in what I was thinking. What I think is Hinduism is probably misunderstood because we have so many gods. Is the first
Not probably,
reaction that
it is misunderstood.
I agree. Right. So it's not a question of having too many gods. We are the only ones that are saying there is only God. So anything you see is actually an aspect of God. So it's the recursion going to the extreme. You recurse and say this is God, that is God. But then what is not God? There's everything is God. So I think that was my takeaway from that henotheistic discussion that what's his name, Ram Nori brought up. But that I link back to this concept where that's why that is brought about symbolically by having all these aspects represented by gods or demigods, and they don't actually exist in some state, and that is in 2B. They don't, is my personal opinion. I may be wrong. And second thing is, I've been having this insight which I shared with Kama on this creator, sustainer, and destroyer. Creator, sustainer, destroyer is also nothing but something that gets created at the point of the MOW. So at the point of, I mean, this is again my point of view. Kama is also thinking about it. I think he did not willingly embrace it, but he did not dismiss it. So, my point is, so at the point of the whim, till then time does not exist, right? Time does not exist till the point of the whim. At the point of the whim, the concept of time is created. And with the emergence of time, the roles of creator, sustainer, and destroyer automatically emerge, because in creation is the past, in the present lies the sustenance, in the destruction lies the future. Is my insight. I may be, as I said, smoking, or I was smoking weed that night. I don't know. Kama, remember the conversation?
Yeah, yes. I think you made a good point, because see, creation, preservation, dissolution, these three things are aspects of nature. Whether you look at stars, whether you look at human beings, animate objects, inanimate objects, And I think one reference in God Speaks, Baba talks about if we take our own breathing cycle, because that is the most micro aspect that we can consider. Inhalation is creation, retention of breath is preservation, and dissolution is exhalation. Similarly, our daily 24 hours, waking up in the morning is creation. Now we are awake 16 hours a day, that is preservation. And when you go back to sleep, that is dissolution. That is another aspect. The third aspect is our individual birth cycle. You're born, you live, and you die. So that is similar to what is happening to the stars. It's happening to us for between 80 to 100 years. Stars, it happens between 10 million to 10 billion years, as we know. Our solar system itself, our sun is 4.5 billion years old, and it has another 4.5 to 5 billion years to keep doing what it's doing, and then it will expand and it will become a red dwarf or something like called the Chandrasekhar limit. So I think creation, preservation, dissolution is happening constantly. When you look at super colliders, when physicists are working on these big hadron colliders in Geneva and all that, you notice that the subatomic particles are constantly bombarding each other and changing into other particles in 10 raised to minus 34 seconds kind of thing, So yes, these are all symbolic representations because ultimately, I was thinking about this word self-realization and God realization. So what does it mean? Like, when we are awake, we see God in embodied form. When we go to sleep, it's formless. We ourselves don't exist because there is only the self observing the body with its three bodies. So to me, the simplified form of God speaks related to our day-to-day practical life is Parapar Parabrahma state is the sound sleep state that we undergo, and the Paramatma state is the waking state. The only difference is in the waking state, we are either spending sanskaras, unintelligent action, or we are unwinding sanskaras, intelligent action, which is being or becoming. So in a very simplified way, to me, every human being on planet Earth is doing only two kinds of action. Intelligent action, unwinding sanskaras, if he is self-aware, and unintelligent action, spending sanskaras, which is becoming. Jai Baba.
Okay. Any other reactions to my provocation? Or it's just a rant?
No, I think there is a lot more meaning there. So the whole of the Puranas or the spiritual text, they are on the storyline because these concepts are so difficult to understand. It has been told in those storylines. And over a period of time, the concept has dropped off and stories have remained. That is what is happening. That's why we have to go to the say kernel of the story and then try to link them up with the different aspects of concept. So that's why I come back to that Veda learning system in Hinduism, where they say 12 to 14 years is the period where they learn the Vedas. And what they do in that 14 years is the same set of text is learned over a period of 14 years. So they start with chanting. They try to understand, and for that reason, they go through different aspects of the language, say grammar, say all the aspects, shastras, and all that are added. And ultimately, at the end, they drop off everything of all these appendages and realize the core essence of the Vedas. So that's why after the period of learning, they come out with a sort of knowledge of God. So this process needs all the storytelling. And only thing is the whole of humanity remains in that story itself. That is the problem. Jai Baba.
Brilliant, brilliant. I think that's exactly what I think too. So, like you said, even those going through the Vedas get lost in it,
Yes, yes.
right? So the problem is they are not able to think beyond.
Ah,
But the model is very superior. The model or the process that Hinduism has is obviously very superior. But it is geared for that minority of the souls that can figure this out. But the approach and process is for everybody. So
yes,
everybody does the same ritual. The ritual is actually that of the highest order, which only talks of the infinite goal. But it is for the small minority that is able to figure this out. The
yes,
rest just do it as a ritual. The rest just get lost in the symbol.
yes. Remain only in the Karma Kanda forever.
Correct. Correct. And that I dare say is their karma. Yeah.
Jai Baba, to add to what you guys just said, another observation is that the 80-20 rule of life, law of nature, probably 20% are capable or have the capacity or are interested in the Jnana Yoga aspect, that is understanding the metaphysics of Vedanta Advaita, because it is not for everybody.
Yes,
Even Ravana Maharishi said there are two ways of attaining God realization. One is through Jnana Yoga, one is through Bhakti Yoga. In Bhakti Yoga is what Baba talks about is complete surrenderance to the will of the master. That is where the Hafiz sayings come into play. So, in fact, in our group, I won't going to make any names, whatever. Like there are people who are already connected to Baba in a Bhakti Yoga aspect, but probably, like I'm talking about old comers, okay? So, sorry, it's just a generalized statement that once you are connected with Baba, then if you feel comfortable with it, stay in it, abide in it. Getting into discourses and God speaks needs a certain kind of temperament and also dedication and sincerity. I'm not saying that, yes, it adds value because it gives you some kind of coherence in understanding this whole aspect of nature. At least for me, I use a combination of both Bhakti Yoga and Jnana Yoga. Of course, nobody can come to Baba without Bhakti Yoga. But once somebody is already embedded with Baba through pure love, and everything is going fine, no need to mess around with the knowledge aspect, God speaks and discourses and all these things, because it is again Maya playing games. The mind doesn't want you to self-realize. The nature of the mind is to prolong its own, activity and its own life, even though it
Domination.
is, yes, even if it's artificial. So I'm always tell people that, what, uh, if you're connected, don't even get into all this knowledge aspects, of understanding the God speaks and all these tables, because it will really drive you crazy, and what will happen is it will distract you from your own connection, pure connection that you already have with Baba, So most 80, so that is why I'm talking about the 80-20 aspect of nature, that 80% is herd mentality in the universe. They like to follow. And if they follow the right teacher, they are fine. They want to deal with the simple pleasures of life. Whereas the other 20% are designed to actually have to delve into the Jnana Yoga aspects, So this is just a general statement, not to make any kind of judgment or any kind of, what do you call, criticism or nothing like that. Just an observation, Jai Baba.
Okay, so how many are jumping off the call now?
No, this itself is told by Baba. Say, what was the need for Baba to say tell about God speaks and discourses, and also tell in the same breath that just remember me, surrender to me.
Yes,
That is
yes.
the thing that you are supposed to do. So
Perfect.
he has put both the things together. and then told to for us to catch on. So if somebody is say discussing God speaks and discourses, that doesn't mean he doesn't surrender to Baba. He surrenders because he has a mindset which inquires so much that is also satisfied by this all this study, and ultimately we also surrender. That is how I look at it. Jai Baba.
Yes, you're correct. And to answer that question, how many, in fact, in today's satsang, there are only 6 people. So to me, to answer that question, all 6 people are interested and want to do that, so that answers the question. Nobody's going to jump off the ship right now within the 6, at least I can say that, So the missing in action, the answer lies in the question, Jai Baba.
IEIP. Intense effort, infinite patience. Let's get on.
Yes.
Let's keep going. Yeah. Mazoobs a Kamil. That's the next subtitle. Some God realized souls
No, you are
retain their.
jumping up somewhere.
No, I'm not.
273
Oh,
differences.
yes. Yes, I am. Yeah. I have to start from poise and happiness of God realized.
Not
Correct?
poise. That we have finished. Differences in relation to universe.
Oh, we ended at is.
Yes,
You're
yes.
right. Yes, correct. Differences in relation to universe. When a person attains God realization, he has infinite power, knowledge, and bliss. These intrinsic characteristics of inner realization are always the same despite minor differences, which give rise to certain distinguishable types of God realized beings. These differences between the God realized are purely extrinsic and pertain only to their relation with the universe. We did this. They do not create any degrees of spiritual status between the God realized, who are all perfect and one with all life and existence. From the point of view of the creation, however, these differences between the God realized are not only definite but worth noting. After God realization, most souls drop all their bodies and remain eternally immersed in God consciousness. For them, God is the only reality and the entire universe is a zero. They are so completely identified with the impersonal aspect of the truth that they have no direct link with the world of forms. Mazoobs a Kamil. Some God realized souls retain their gross, subtle, and mental bodies. But in their absorption in God consciousness, they are totally unconscious of the existence of their bodies. Others in creation continue to see these bodies and treat them as persons incarnate, but the bodies exist only from the point of view of the observer. Such God realized persons are called Mazoobs a Kamil in Sufi terminology. These Mazoobs do not use their bodies consciously because their consciousness is wholly directed toward God and is not turned toward the bodies or the universe. For them, their own bodies as well as the world of forms have no existence, so there can be no question of their using the bodies in relation to the world of forms. However, their bodies are necessarily the centers for radiation of the unpremeditated and constant overflow of the infinite bliss, knowledge, and love that they enjoy. Those who revere them derive great spiritual benefit from this spontaneous radiation of divinity. Okay. Some God realized souls indifferent to creation. In addition to consciousness of God, some God realized beings have an awareness of the existence of other souls who are still in bondage. They know all these souls to be forms of the Paramatma, Oversoul, and that all are destined one day to achieve emancipation and some God realization. Being established in this knowledge, they remain indifferent to the provisional and changing lots of the souls who are in bondage. These God realized souls know that just as they themselves have realized God, others will also realize God at some time. They are uninterested, however, in speeding up the God realization of those who are in bondage and take no active interest in the time process of creation. So, new twist. What is emancipation? And I know we discussed this even the last time we read this, right? So there's a new twist. So some souls achieve emancipation and some God realization. Anybody on the new
Nirvana and Nirvikalpa Samadhi, liberation. See,
Okay.
sorry, liberation, the word liberation, mukti, as per God speaks, there are different kinds of liberation, starting with moksha, correct? Ordinary mukti after death. And then before death, you have nirvana, which is the first stage. That is only bliss. Sorry, I wouldn't say the word bliss. It is consciousness is, you are aware of the divine absolute vacuum state of state one. And nirvana means, naturally, nirvana comes after Manonash. And all souls have to get nirvana. That is the goal. And it will happen to all the souls. That is why the 84 lakh human cycles. So that is actually emancipation. If you look at it from that point of view, because there are only two things. One is nirvana and one is nirvikalpa samadhi, which is God realization or self-realization, where you experience infinite power, infinite knowledge, infinite bliss. Whereas in nirvana, you only experience the divine absolute vacuum state. But because Baba had given the analogy of the sound sleep state, where you are unconsciously connected with the Paramatma, and we know that the sound sleep state is a form of bliss. That is where I kind of extrapolated that divine absolute vacuum state as the state of experiencing bliss, even though this is not given in God Speaks as such. But I just kind of extrapolated that example that Baba gave about the divine absolute vacuum state equivalent to the sound sleep state, Jai Baba.
Yeah, this particular paragraph, some God realized souls indifferent to creation. Do we have any examples? Say, because the other states we have the mazubs, all the other different types of identification by their qualities. But can we have an example of souls in this or in this particular stage where they are totally disinterested, uninterested?
Indifference to creation is Madzub state, basically. God consciousness is the self-realization state, and after Madzub, the Paramahamsa, Jivan Mukta, and Sadguru are creation consciousness or body consciousness. So Madzub is the state of only God consciousness and not body consciousness.
Oh, that is correct. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think the last time we read Discourses, I think you explained it the same way, but it went over my head. Now on the second reading, it's a little better. Still not completely clear, but good. Thank you.
I'm again re-emphasizing here for the benefit of all concerned. Master that table, page 278, and take all those terminologies and use the glossary and try to connect the dots, the ICS. That once you get it, yeah, I'm still in the work in progress in that, okay? But it is very intricate. That table, unfortunately, is not there in the Hindi English translation now, okay? But that table is very important and it gives you the big picture of all the different states and what are the different functions, what is the difference between state, status, stage, and so on and so forth. Jai Baba.
Sure. So we'll continue. Man God, Sadguru. A rare few God realized souls not only possess God consciousness, but are also conscious of creation and their own bodies. They take active interest in the souls who are in bondage, and they use their own bodies consciously to work in creation in order to help other souls in their Godward march. Such a God realized soul is called Man God, Perfect Master, Sadguru, Kutub, or Salik e Mukammil. The man God experiences himself as the center of the entire universe, and everyone, high or low, good or bad, is at the same distance from him. In the Sufi tradition, this is called the Kutub. The Kutub controls the whole universe through his agents. God-man, avatar. When man becomes God and retains creation consciousness, he is called a man-God. And when God becomes man, he is called the God-man or the avatar. The God-man is the foremost Sadguru who was the first to emerge through evolution and involution, and he helps all souls in bondage through his recurring advents. However, from the point of view of the fundamental characteristics of consciousness and the nature of his work in creation, the God-man is like any other man-God. The God-man and the man-God never lose their God consciousness even for an instant, although they may be engaged in all sorts of activities in relation to creation. Neither has a finite and limited mind. Both work through the universal mind when they desire to help other souls. That ends this chapter, I think. We go to the
Can you
part
please explain
2.
that?
Me?
Sorry, can you please explain whoever the last couple of lines?
So universal mind, yeah, I was also wondering what. I mean, I think universal mind is referred to multiple places. Kama, you want to comment on that?
Sorry, what is the question?
What is the finite mind and what's the universal mind, and the fact that the avatar and the perfect master operate through the universal mind? Can you comment on that?
Oh, okay. So we know that from that chapters on types of meditation, AID, absorption in divinity, is nirvana. Divinity in expression is nirvikalpa samadhi, and divinity in action is sahaja samadhi. So divinity in action, sahaja samadhi, is related to the God-man avatar and man-God perfect masters because they are working directly, actively with the common public. That is number one. Number two is difference between universal mind and finite mind. Finite mind is what we ordinary souls are operating with. The God realized beings, because they have infinite power, knowledge, and bliss, have what you call as a universal mind, just like they have a divine ego. Okay, just like they have the individual, the infinite individualized consciousness, right? So we are operating with a finite mind, whereas perfect masters operate with a universal mind because they are actually able to be present in every soul. So they know exactly what is happening where with anyone, anybody. That is why it is called the universal mind. There is also another word which they use, universal mind, and then there is another universal that they use. So that is the basic difference, basically.
I may add, as we go through the planes, it is explained that we can see distances, we can see what is happening in others' mind and things like that. So it is the growing universal mind as we involute, and absolutely when they come to the final stage, they have that universal mind. They have, this is a single mind which is controlling the whole process of the creation. So they know everything and they are acting in everything. That is the way we can understand it, I think. Jai Baba.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's a good point. It's a gradual broadening of the mind to a point where it is the universal mind.
I was just browsing through the Wikipedia while this came up. Very interesting concept that they have put it. They are saying it is a metaphysical concept suggesting an underlying essence of all being and becoming in the universe. It includes the being and becoming that occurred in the universe prior to the arising of the concept of mind, a term that more appropriately refers to the organic, human aspect
Great.
of universal consciousness.
Interesting. Interesting.
And there are a lot of people who have researched also.
Interesting. Interesting. I think I just realized we barely have 8 minutes, so we may not start the part two, and we can take up any questions or discussions for the next few minutes, or even wrap up a little early, rather than start part two. Any points of discussion?
Karthik, you didn't post last week's talks.
Video, yes. No, I've been a bit tied up this whole week, and then, of course, my computer not helping me is going to make it difficult over this weekend as well. So I'll post all of them at the earliest. I'm not committing because I need to either fix my PC or I'm constrained to have to work only with a monitor, only at home.
Okay. So I missed last Sunday. So, okay. Thank you.
Okay. So last Sunday we read the previous chapter. It was a good, very good discussion. I will post that pretty soon.
Please. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Regarding what we read today, to link with another thing, what we are doing in another group, I think Listen Humanity, the pages between maybe 100 to 100, end of the chapter relates to the development of all these different stages and definitions and classification of different stages from nirvana onwards. So dropping of the body and then say moksha, what happens, when, what happens. There were a lot of confusions there. So for those people, I think they can read this particular chapter. I will put it in the group, I think, so that they can revisit this chapter and then collate them with what we have already read.
Mamaji, we need to invite Kama to that group one day to answer all the questions and all the confusion that happened last time. And you stopped it.
And I dropped out from the conversation because of some disturbance at family.
Yes.
And actually the answers came up after, as you were reading. And then Dilshad, I think, pointed out that in the message to me. And then I read it through once again. So this, I think, Karthik, can you go to page number, I think if I go to my script, I have highlighted some of the points there.
Yeah, when do you open it up?
No, you just go scroll through, go up to 100 and 10 or 109, I think.
Okay, 109.
After this, 10.
Okay. With
So
the
around
annulment of
110,
sanskaras.
11, there is an explanation of what happens after, say, a person jumps from the 6th plane to the 7th plane. And that is the initial Pana and then the Panapila. So those things are explained. And then what is, say, Baka and Bakapila is also explained there. So in that, actually, there was confusion that say in moksha, person after death gets moksha only after the 3rd or 4th day. That is what is the understanding. So that is was a bit confused. And say Sadguru comes back to life after death was the idea coming to some people. Then I counted it, and then there was a lot of discussion. Sadhguru never dies, and he is still living, and there is only one life to the Sadhguru. And then, as he is living, he becomes a realized soul, and then keeps living, and then acts as a Sadhguru, and then finally he ends his journey by the physical death of the body. So there was confusion there. I think those who are studying that can read this chapter, what we read today, and then collate them together for a better understanding. That was what I was trying to tell.
Our question and debate was, I think, twofold, Dattaji. One was that, which I think I had asked, that, when you take Baba's name at the last moment, you get moksha. So people, once they get moksha, then they don't come back in body. That is the end for them. They live
Yes,
in
yes.
eternal bliss. And then the second debate which came up was that, do all people who get nirvana invariably get nirvikalpa samadhi, which Dilshad said that yes, all people who get nirvana invariably get nirvikalpa samadhi. I think our whole debate started from there, isn't it,
Yes,
Dattaji?
yes, 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 yes. And
So
then,
now Kama has the question in perspective.
yes, Kava, can you comment on that? So all
Yes,
people who
an
get,
observation. I think it is incorrect to say that
yes,
everybody who gets nirvana gets nirvikalpa samadhi. No. Number two is, who gets moksha, ordinary mukti after death, doesn't have to be in the planes of involution. It says God-fearing souls. There are God-loving souls, there are
yes,
God-fearing souls. These are people who follow rituals, they follow the book to the T, and they do all kinds of action properly. They might be having sanskaras, but probably they pass that criteria. We don't know what is that. So moksha can happen to anyone, ordinary mukti. It doesn't have to be that you have to be in the planes of involution. We don't know that. Second thing is that all souls will get nirvana. That is very clear because of the number 84 lakh human cycles. Number three, all souls will not get nirvikalpa samadhi, God realization or self realization. In God Speaks, in the glossary, in the footnotes, it is described that nirvana is a goal, but nirvikalpa samadhi is the goal. So if we focus on nirvikalpa samadhi, hopefully we'll get nirvana, because what is the point of having nirvikalpa samadhi? Okay, you are already a human being. We are in the image of God. This is a divine dream. So the only problem here, or the challenge, is manonash. The fact that we have prarabdha sanskaras and we are trying to dissolve our ego, the prarabdha sanskaras create the ego personality self. And the ego personality self is preventing us from attaining nirvana. Because the meaning of nirvana is FAMN, fana, annihilation of the mind, manonash, right? So the basic purpose of taking this human form is to dissolve sanskaras, because anyway, only after nirvana you're going to get nirvikalpa samadhi. So why even try to get, all bogged down into Nirvikalpa Samadhi? The main thing is to work on ourselves, to work on intelligent action, to unwind sanskaras, rather than, see, all this literature reading is good, that because it adds spice to our life. We are able to understand certain situations, because when I was reading about Ramakrishna, Ramana Maharishi, frankly, I didn't know what kind of state they are in. I knew they were God realized, but thanks to Baba, that table on page 278, where it defines each of the different categories, helped me as a intellectual nerd to actually be able to understand Ramana Maharshi and Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So coming back to the other question, there are 7,000 in the functional spiritual hierarchy, which is agents between first plane to the seventh plane. There are 56 God realized souls, we know that. And then in the seventh plane, there is 5 plus 3, 8, right? 5 perfect masters and 3 madzubs that belong to the 7,000 functional spiritual hierarchy. Does it mean that only these people are there in the involution state? No. Some people are given, these are agents. That is why it is called the functional spiritual hierarchy. I was pondering on it. Are there only 7,000 people in the world who are actually in the planes of involution? No. All of us could be veiled, which is what I think. I want to be veiled. I don't care about the 6 planes and all that. If I get Manonash, I'm satisfied. I'm getting 35%, I'm off. Great. So I think that this debate is always going to go on depending on the interpretation. That is why I think by having this forum, it is very mathematical from what I see, the 84 lakh human cycles, 50 crore species of birds, and the 6-7 planes. So there is a method to the madness here, frankly, So, yeah, question? Yes.
Yeah, Kama, so you mean to say that these spiritual agents are not veiled, whereas the others who are in the planes are veiled?
Sorry, there are others in the planes who are what?
Are veiled, but the spiritual agents are not veiled.
Okay. No. Spiritual agents, okay, let me rephrase that. Spiritual agents have certain siddhis, they have certain jobs, they are working on the behalf of the perfect masters. Yes. So I think that they know their siddhis, and you could say they are in a way unveiled. We have to be very careful how we use the word veiled and unveiled. In a way, you can say that because they have these powers based on certain planes of involution, they are being used as agents by the higher, the Sadgurus and the sixth plane masters or whatever. Yes, correct. And people like us could be, in veiled form, and we could get moksha. We don't know. But also the other statement I wanted to challenge is that you take the name of Baba and you come to me. Now that can be interpreted in many different ways. It's like saying, I'm going to just eat, drink, and be merry and indulge in lust, greed, and anger. But in the last 24 hours, I'm going to chant Baba all the time. Does it mean that you're going to get moksha? Sorry, I don't believe that. I think what Baba is saying, that when you come to me, the way I understand is that when you take newer births, future births, I'm going to be there with you. You don't have to worry about a Sadguru and a perfect master and a guru. That is how I interpret it. Jai Baba.
That is very interesting, because I was asking that question. That, anybody who takes Baba's name at the last moment gets moksha, according to what we have read in the literature. But then there should be a huge difference in the state of consciousness between somebody who has got ordinary mukti and somebody who gets nirvana.
No, I think if you read the rider that Baba has given, that if you take my name in your last breath, you are going to reach me. But after that, he has told that to do this, you have to take my name every day.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time. Otherwise, you will not do that.
At
The
least
other
once.
interpretation I have on this is, what do you mean by taking Baba's name? It is not saying Baba. It is knowing Baba. Knowing Baba means what all literature he has left. That also, if you are knowing, then you are rightly going to be God realized. That is also way we can see this thing. We need not understand that say just Baba, Baba, that you will reach your destination. That is not the thing. He says you do it every day, every 24 hours. Remember me, remember me. That what do you mean by remembering Baba? To remember all the aspects of Baba, all the stories of Baba, all the messages of Baba, all the treatises he has given, to the extent of your capability, your mental capability, you should be able to absorb everything related to Baba. Then you are doing justice. That is what Baba is impressing. So it can be in degrees for different people. What is the absorption of kama is different from what is the absorption of another person. So that may vary, but everyone is making that struggle, making that effort. That is what Baba wants. That's how I look at it. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
I think the people on this call, if we all agree with that, we'll be in a big minority. But then let's not say this in public. Let's keep quiet. I agree with you, though.
Okay. And the confusion in the earlier meeting, what we had was, say when we say moksha and say nirvikalpa samadhi, so moksha or say nirvana and nirvikalpa samadhi, when we talk of that, so we explain nirvana and end of the physical existence. And then we start talking about nirvikalpa samadhi. So a person who ends his physical, say, dual life with nirvana, that is the end of the story for that person. But a person who is destined for nirvikalpa samadhi doesn't stop at nirvana, but he moves in the physical body to nirvikalpa samadhi and maybe also to further bakabila also. Some people get confused there. So once he has dropped his body, how does he become a Sadguru, and all that confusion comes. One who is destined to be a Sadguru will never die at the level of Fana or Fana Fila. He will go to Baka and Baka Vila also. So till that time, he will retain his physical body. That is how I understand this. Jai Baba.
It's because everything is predestined. Predestined.
Huh?
Jai Baba.
Yes.
Because it's all predestined.
Yes, yes. So that was the confusion there. So that's why they said they will come back to life after 4 days when they become, say, reach moksha and then continue and then become Sadguru and all that. There was some sort of a confusion in understanding for some of the people. That's why I stopped that and then said we will all read properly and then come back and discuss.
Jai Baba, I think that what you said is, if I understood the confusion, see, the process is, as we know, after nirvana, I don't know whether the person drops his body, that's not given. So I don't know anything about that. But that is the first stage. Second stage of fana, after nirvana, a few souls become God realized, which is called nirvikalpa samadhi, fanafila.
Yes.
From this, most drop souls after 3 or 4 days of nirvikalpa samadhi will drop their bodies, and a few will remain. That few belongs to that 56 God realized beings who have certain functions as Madzu, Jivan Mukta, and so on. And you're right, Bakabila state is different from the Paramahamsa or the Madzub state, because in the Bakabila state, you are abiding in God and also participating in the activities of the world, you know. So there is a fine thin line about understanding Bakabila, you know. It is also called Atma Pratishtapana in Sanskrit. But in the table also, it gets a little confusing. You know, I've also been challenged by that. What is the difference between the Jivan Mukta and the Sadguru? Because both are in Sahaja Samadhi, which means divinity in action. But the difference I feel is that the Jivan Mukta is passive, whereas the Sadguru is actively involved, because both are in Bakabila state. And Bakabila means simultaneously you're experiencing God realization as well as creation consciousness or body consciousness. Whereas Majzub doesn't have body consciousness or creation consciousness. Whereas the Paramahamsa is alternating between God consciousness sometimes, and sometimes he is in creation consciousness, which is what Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, kind of does that. So this Sadguru aspect that he is born is all hogwash. There's nothing, the Sadguru is in embodied form as per the divine plan. And then when his time is ready, he will drop his body and never come back. So that is why the controversy about Satya Sai Baba using Shirdi Sai Baba as his, being the rebirth is completely wrong, basically, and that is what we saw, what happened to that organization, so we don't want to get into that, but, truth is stranger than fiction. We saw the reality of that whole, Satya Sai Baba, organization, Jai Baba.
So that brings me to the next provocative question. I don't want to drag it, but I'll just leave that thought and we'll pick it up tomorrow morning. So all of us kind of went to a consensus to say the whole thing is scripted, right? So it is determined. There is a perfect master going to, going through the involution to reach that point. There are 5 of them, 56, all of that. So it's pre-scripted, preordained. So what's the role of action? Intelligent action. What's the role of free will? So in that sense, what does one do in the context of such a strong prescripting? So I think the answer lies somewhere in between, but then I'd leave all of you to ponder on that. And we'll pick up in the morning whether prescript or free will or somewhere in between.
You want me to answer that, huh?
Yeah, you can.
I will also.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Why wait? Why wait? Tomorrow an astro can hit us but look, it's pre-scripted. What are we doing? It's a very good question. It's a beautiful question. What the hell am I doing out here? That is what is who am I? Correct? What am I? Who am I? Where am I? Blah, blah, blah.
Honestly, that is a selfish question. I wanted Mama to become a perfect.
The simple answer is, right? You are a player actor. You are already God. Only God can play this divine game. Okay, simple. Only thing is, God, avatar. See, avatar is still a messenger of God. Okay, see, this is many people are not even understood the 100% definition of the avatar. Now, you guys can contradict me, but my understanding of avatar, which I keep repeating, is the first human drop soul which became God realized. We know that. And avatar is not God. Avatar is God in human form. That is why he's like a messenger. He's a representative. Now, who are we? We are also a drop soul. And the drop soul is like a player actor. Suppose you're in Hollywood, Bollywood, there are many actors. Very few play leading roles and become actor directors like a Sadguru, you can say So what I feel is that we are playing this divine game. The beauty about God Speaks and Discourses is given us this framework of how this game has to be played. Discourses tells you how, and God Speaks tells you who is God, what is God, why God, right? Now, the fact that we are here, we can't complain, why am I here? You might as well get on with the job. So job is like, suppose you have corona. The idea is you have to get rid of corona to be healthy. Suppose you have a headache. You have to get rid of the headache to be a natural human being. So similarly, the sanskaras, which determines our ego, and nirvana, which means annihilation of the mind, which is the mental body, which is the repository of sanskaras, which determines our ego personality self, the ego has to become zero. It has nothing to do with love. Divine love is latent in everything and everybody, especially in human beings, in the highest form. What we are trying to do is that divine love is covered by sanskaric, evolutionary sanskaras, the lust, greed, and anger that we have carried from our animal kingdom. And we are trying to rub it off, dissolve it. What Dr. Weiss says, we are all rough diamonds polishing ourselves. So I think the only thing to do is to live in the moment, understand the rules of the game, and act accordingly. We have to behave like God. Meher Baba came to show us how does a human being behave? That's it. We don't have to put him on a pedestal and start throwing flowers and chanting and blah, blah, blah. That's fine. Kindergarten, you got to start all that, but we are not there now, So that's my point, that intelligent action, be self-aware, unwind sanskaras, being and not becoming. We're just spending sanskaras, reacting to the situation, but using our intelligence, using Baba's discourses or all the messages like seven realities, my wish. That's it. He's given us a workbook, Jai Baba.
For your question, Karthik, what I can say is, so what we are doing is also predestined. So keep doing it. That's all.
That's it.
Yes,
No, not
otherwise,
exactly. It is a paradox. It is a paradox. The paradox is the big picture is predestined, but the micro aspect, what you do today, you have tea or coffee is your choice. That is not
Yeah.
predestined.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Baba.
I think
All
free
right.
will creates a karma. Free will creates a karma. If you're walking on the road and you see somebody is in trouble, or there's a beggar who's very hungry, you have two options: either to just walk right past him or to stop and help him. So I think that's what creates a karma. That's a free will. Is it something like that on a more micro level?
No, even then, that action of a person, either A or B, is also predestined. Some do the A action, some do the B action. Why?
That is also
Why that
predestined.
difference?
That is also predestined.
That is also, if that is the case, you go
Then
ahead.
there's no free will.
No, there
Then
is a
what we
free
are
will. It
doing
is
is
like
also
if you,
predestined. Let's continue. That's all.
But Doc,
yeah,
when you
no,
say
there
the
is a
word
free will. So
predestined,
others,
when you say predestined, isn't that to do with sanskaras?
Yes, yes. That is the whole crux of it. So we
So we
have
should.
to, we are in the process of either diluting or crystallizing our samskara. So with the knowledge that all this knowledge that we are acquiring, doing all this exercise with Baba, maybe we are reducing our sanskaras, and that is also predestined for us. Why we are doing it? Because we are chosen to do this as predestination.
But Doc, one
so
second,
I'm
sorry.
just
My,
thinking
my, my
aloud,
point
Bama
is,
here.
Yeah, Jayanti wants to say something.
go ahead, Jayanti.
So I'm just thinking it in this analogy. The destination is the same for everybody. All of us are not choosing a road 1, 2, 3, or whatever roads that we feel. And while going in that road, there may be road bumps, there may be some potholes, you may meet with an accident or whatever. So the free will is that the road or the path that we have chosen, and the consequences of the path that we have chosen, we need to deal with it, and ultimately we will reach that destination because all roads are joining there only.
Yes.
So some routes are shorter and some are longer, depending
Yeah,
upon what you choose.
and some roads are smoother and some roads are rough.
Rougher.
I just wanted to add that basically the path, the road is predestined, but we have a choice to of the behavior, choice of our action, and that is what the human intellect has. It's got a choice. So, like in the analogy of the beggar, we have a choice either to stop and help or to move on. That may not be scripted. That is our conscience, our choice to do or not to do.
No,
Uh,
it is like if you are going by a car, and you have chosen a road where the car cannot go, and then you are getting out of the car and walking, and that will be a miserable long journey, and there will be a lot of experiences during that one. So maybe the beggar's choice is that he got down from the car and he got down into the rough path and tiny path which has much more miseries.
Yeah, but that is based on your impression sanskaras. That we have
Yeah.
to unwind, or we have to make our sanskaras equal to zero. That's the game, or that's the target.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we are
So
My point.
debating that.
ultimately, when we are starting the journey at any point of the birth, Our goal has to be, it has to be a smoother, and you need to be making it faster, better, and choose the right path. So for that we need the guidance, or the GPS. And that GPS is all our no scripts that we are having it, and we can choose how we want to go. Even if the path is very very tough and the car cannot go, you might choose a bicycle or a bike, uh, and no take somebody's help along with you, or no take a side path and come and join road B instead of road A.
So a beggar is a beggar not because of some past karmas he has performed, but it is the route he's taking, fast tracking
Yeah.
himself.
See, the beggar can always go and sit in a shop and says, I'll sell fruits for you. And then from there, he can just improve on it. But he chose to become a big beggar for whatever convenience that he feels. And
Okay.
some beggars are very, very rich. Like we
Oh
see
yeah.
all kinds of messages, right? They are doing Hawala business in Mumbai also, some beggars. But still, they will come and beg, or they will create a beggary unit of stealing kids and then making them beg and whatever it is. But they don't want to come out of it. So that's a choice that they are making.
Well,
Another
the debate
angle.
is not over, but I think I like Kama's question. So if it is it is samskaras. So even the samskaras in the previous birth were also predestined, and so on and so forth. That
It is
doesn't add
from
up.
the start, from the whim,
That
the
doesn't. Yeah,
whim that
no, no.
we
But
have
then
chosen.
correct.
No.
But then there is some amount of free will apart from the prescripting. The broad script is written, but the finer points are determined by your action. Is what I feel. We're way out of time, so maybe we can still
Yes.
pick this up and talk about it tomorrow morning before we continue, and you can use the rest of the day to ponder on this. There's no easy answer. I think, as it may seem, one side, if you go and lean on the side of deterministic, then you're just saying fatalist. You're just a fatalist, right? So you just go with the flow. It's all done anyway. I don't have anything to do. And I just go through the motions. On the other side, you
That's a
say,
resigned fact.
yeah, resignation, right? Resignation, reconciliation, and then just say, go on with it. The other side, you say, no, no, everything is enterprise. Everything is what I can do, right? But I think it's neither. And again, just to add to this point, which I made earlier as well, we've uncovered in the past that Baba rarely talks about free will. Rarely. He's not talked about it at all, right? So there's something to that as well. So we'll pick up on free will versus predetermined, prescripted lives tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, enjoy the rest of the Saturday and have a great day ahead, and we will catch up tomorrow morning.
Jai
Jai
Baba,
Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, everybody.
Jai Baba.